Hi, my name is Thao, and today I will be finding reciprocal trig ratios, which are sine, cosine, tangent, cosecant, secant, and cotangent. To help you remember the definition of the trig ratios, just remember the phrase Sohcahtoa, which I will show right now. So Ka Toa. So if you remember this phrase, you will probably be able to find the trig ratios very easily as this. So first, let's break it down. So this S stands for sine, and we'll just use this image to the left of us to direct us which one is opposite, adjacent, and hypotenuse. So first, the S stands for sine. So sine of x equals, and then this O stands for opposite. And the H stands for hypotenuse. I'll even label it here. Okay. Hypotenuse. Moving on, the ka part of the phrase stands for cosine. And we'll use the example to show. So cosine of an angle equals adjacent over hypotenuse. C standing for cosine, A standing for adjacent, and H standing for hypotenuse. The last part of the phrase, toa, T stands for tangent. So tangent of an angle equals opposite here over adjacent. Now that we understand what the trig ratios stand for and what they mean, we can move on to the other three, which were cosecant, secant, and cotangent, as they are the reciprocal of these three. So first, cosecant of an angle is the reciprocal of sine. But be sure not to get mixed up, as it can sound a lot like cosine as it's cosecant. Just remember that cosecant goes with sine. And so since it's the reciprocal of sine, it means the hypotenuse over opposite. I genuinely like to remember it as since it's the reciprocal, I just swap these two with each other, as it's easier for me to remember it that way. And next, ka the reciprocal would be secant. So secant of an x, or of an angle, x represents an angle here, is hypotenuse over adjacent. Finally, cotangent is the reciprocal of tangent. So cotangent of an angle equals adjacent over opposite. Okay, so now moving on, I'd like to go to an example. Okay, so for example though, I'd like to make this smaller, so then you like. Okay, so for the example, I'd like to first of all move this and make it smaller. So we can see it for our example down here. Okay, so we have our phrase Sohcahtoa to help us with this example of find the 6 trigonometric ratios for angle C in the right triangle given. So we have C here as our angle. And so with our phrase Sohcahtoa, we could figure out that sine of C equals opposite over hypotenuse. So we'd look at the opposite of the angle, which would be 3, and the hypotenuse is across from the right angle, which would be 5. And we know that the reciprocal is basically the two hypotenuse over opposite. So we could also do that. Oh. Remember, cosecant is the reciprocal of sine. So it would be hypotenuse 5 over opposite, which is 3. Okay, and then moving on to cosine. Cosine of C equals adjacent. So adjacent would be the side touching the angle, which we have 2, but we know that the side opposite of the right angle is the hypotenuse, so our adjacent would be 4. And adjacent would always depend if it was on the angle. So like, for instance, if the angle was A instead, the adjacent would be 3. So beware of that and don't mix them up. So adjacent 4 over hypotenuse, which is 5. And then secant is the reciprocal of cosine. So secant, secant of C equals hypotenuse, which is 5 over adjacent 4. So 5 over 4 is the secant of C. Finally, tangent of C equals opposite, which is 3, over adjacent, 4, 3 over 4, and cotangent of C equals adjacent over opposite, which is 4 over 3. And that is how you find reciprocal trig ratios. Thank you for listening.